My coworker found me unconscious in the break room at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not collapsed dramatically, just slumped in a chair with my forehead on the table and a half-eaten granola bar in my hand, like I'd simply stopped in the middle of existing. She told me later she thought I was dead. She screamed. The security guard came running. By the time the paramedics arrived, I'd come back around enough to say I was fine, I just needed coffee, I had a deadline. They took me anyway. At the hospital, the ER doctor, a tired-looking man named Dr. Petrov, who seemed to have heard every excuse in the book, told me my blood pressure was dangerously high. I was severely dehydrated, and based on my blood work, I had been running on cortisol and nothing else for what looked like weeks. "How long have you been sleeping less than 4 hours a night?" he asked. I had to think about it. Since January, maybe. It was October. He looked at me the way people look at a car with 4 flat tires that's still trying to merge onto the freeway. Then he said he wanted to run more tests, because something in my numbers wasn't right, and he was admitting me overnight. I asked if I could bring my laptop. He said no. I asked my coworker to bring it anyway. That was how they found the tumor. It was benign. I need to say that now, before anyone spirals. A small meningioma sitting quietly at the base of my skull, pressing in a way that explained the headaches I'd been ignoring for 7 months. The occasional blurring in my left eye I'd attributed to screen fatigue. The ringing in my ears I'd decided was just stress. Benign, but it needed to come out. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Ashworth, sat across from me the next morning with a calm that only comes from delivering difficult news many times, and said the word craniotomy like it was a perfectly ordinary word. "Brain surgery," I repeated. "Elective but urgent," she said. "We don't want to wait longer than 6 weeks. It's pressing on tissue that controls vision and balance. If we wait, those symptoms will get worse." I was 28 years old. I managed a team of 12 at a logistics software company. I had $4,200 in savings, $31,000 in student loans, and a brother named Chad who I had quietly given somewhere in the neighborhood of $95,000 over the past 4 years to fund a series of business ideas that had not yet produced a single dollar of profit. But that part comes later. My boss, a steady woman named Renata, no wait, that name's taken. Her name was Faye. Faye drove to the hospital that morning, before I'd even had time to call anyone. My coworker had texted her the night before. Faye sat in the chair beside my bed with 2 cups of hospital coffee and said, "Tell me what you need." I told her I needed to finish the Q3 vendor reconciliation before Friday. She took my laptop out of my bag and put it in her own. "That's not what I meant," she said. "I called my mother at 9 a.m. She answered on the first ring, which meant she was awake, which meant she'd seen my name on the screen, and chosen to pick up, which I noted because it wasn't always a given. "Mom," I said, "I'm in the hospital, they found something." "I need brain surgery." There was a pause. "What kind of something?" "A tumor." "It's benign, but I need a craniotomy, probably within the next few weeks. I'm going to need help during recovery." "Oh, honey." Her voice went soft in a way that made something in my chest loosen just slightly. "That's so scary. How long have you known?" "Since this morning." Another pause. "Is it definitely benign?" "Like they're sure?" "Yes. The imaging is clear." Okay, that's good. That's really good." She exhaled. "Listen, I need to tell you something and I need you not to get upset." I waited. "Your brother's restaurant is doing its soft opening the same week you're talking about. The week of the 14th. He's been planning this for almost 2 years. And all the press people are coming, and your father and I were going to fly out to Portland for the whole week to help him get set up. We already bought the tickets." I knew about the restaurant. I had helped fund the restaurant. $40,000 over 18 months. The initial equipment lease, the walk-in refrigerator that broke and had to be replaced, the branding agency my brother insisted was non-negotiable. The liquor license fees, the health department consultations, 2 rounds of staff training when he'd fired the first group. My brother was 31 years old and had never held a job for longer than 14 months. The restaurant was called Vessel. I was not on the soft opening guest list. "Mom," I said, "I have brain surgery scheduled." "I know, sweetie, and we feel terrible. But Chad has been working toward this for so long. You know what he went through with the food truck. and before that with the catering company. This is finally his moment. If your father and I aren't there, I understand, I said, because I did. I had always understood. I hung up and stared at the ceiling tiles for a long time. Dr. Ashworth scheduled the surgery for October 19th, 6 days before Chad's soft opening. My surgery was at 7 a.m. The procedure would take 4 to 6 hours. I would be in the ICU for at least 24 hours post-op, then moved to a regular room for 2 to 4 days, then discharged with strict restrictions. No driving for at least 6 weeks, no screens for 2 weeks, no strenuous activity, limited time upright, someone with me at all times for the first week at home. Is there someone who can be your support person? Dr. Ashworth asked at my pre-op appointment. I'll figure it out, I said. She wrote something in my chart. I didn't ask what. My mother called the night before the surgery. She and my father had flown to Portland 3 days earlier to help Chad prep the space. I could hear the noise of what sounded like a restaurant kitchen in the background. Clanging, voices, someone laughing. We're thinking about you so much, she said. We lit a candle at the hotel. Dad wants me to tell you he loves you and he'll call tomorrow as soon as he can. What time tomorrow? After the lunch service, probably. They're doing a trial run with the kitchen staff. My surgery starts at 7 in the morning, I said. I know, honey, but you'll probably be in recovery most of the day anyway, right? You won't even know we called. Right, I said. I'm sure everything is going to go perfectly. You're so strong. You've always just handled things. Faye came to the hospital at 6 a.m. and sat with me through pre-op. She brought me a blanket from home because she knew hospital gowns don't do anything. She held my hand while the anesthesiologist went through his checklist. She told me a long, boring story about a camping trip she took with her college roommates in 1997, specifically because she knew a boring story would keep me from spiraling. The last thing I remember before going indoors was her saying, I'll be right here when you wake up. I woke up 8 hours later. The surgery had taken longer than expected, not because of complications, Dr. Ashworth told me, but because she'd want to be thorough, because the location was delicate, because she didn't want to leave anything to chance. Everything had gone well. The tumor was out, the margins were clear. Faye was still there. She had worked on her phone for 8 hours in a waiting room chair, and she was still there. I tried to say something, and it came out wrong because my mouth wasn't working right yet, but she understood. She squeezed my hand and said, Told you I'd be here. My parents didn't call until 4 p.m. I was still in the ICU. My mother's voice was bright, and a little breathless in the way it gets when she's had 2 glasses of wine at lunch. The trial service went so well, she said. Chad absolutely killed it. The reviewers loved the concept. One of them is writing something up for Portland Monthly. Can you believe it? I lay there with a drain in my head and said, That's great, Mom. Is he doing okay after? She paused, and I realized she'd had to think about what she was pausing to ask about. After the surgery? I had brain surgery 12 hours ago, Mom. Oh, I know. I just meant, I'm in the ICU. But you're awake, so that's good. That's really good. Her voice shifted into something softer, practiced. You're always so resilient. You really are. Chad keeps saying he wishes he had your ability to just push through things. I didn't say anything. The soft opening is Thursday, she said. It's going to be incredible. I wish you could be there. Maybe when you're feeling better we can all celebrate together. Chad said he'd put you on the VIP lists. I turned off my phone and went back to sleep. The nurses on my floor were good to me in the way that nurses are good to patients who are clearly going through something beyond the medical. My day nurse, whose name was Lorraine, not on the list, would check my vitals and then linger a moment longer than necessary, like she was making sure the room wasn't too empty. On the second night, she came in around 10 p.m. and found me awake and staring. No family tonight? She asked. My parents are in Portland. My brother's restaurant is opening. She had the kind of face that didn't perform reactions. She just nodded slowly and checked my chart and said, You shouldn't be alone through this. I'm used to it, I said. That's not the same as it being okay. I didn't have an answer for that. My father called on day 2. He was upbeat in the way people are when they're calling to discharge an obligation. Your mother said the surgery went well? Couldn't believe we missed the call yesterday. It was just chaos here. The soft opening is nice. Tonight! Yes, tonight. It's going to be something, I'll tell you. 2 years of work, and it's finally coming together. Chad has really found his thing, I think. He just needed the right environment to flourish. You know, I gave him $40,000, I said. There was a pause. I know, and we really appreciate that. Chad appreciates that. This is as much your success as his. I had a drain in my head yesterday. We know. We felt terrible about the timing. Did you? Because I've been lying here for 2 days and I haven't heard much about feeling terrible. Emma, he started, then stopped. You know that's not fair. This was planned months ago. So was my brain, I said. It's been growing this tumor for years. It didn't check Chad's calendar first. I could hear him working out how to respond. I could almost see his face doing the thing it did when he was trying to decide whether to push back or smooth over. He always smoothed over. We'll come see you as soon as the opening week is done, he said. We'll fly back Sunday. My discharge is Saturday. Oh. Well, we'll come Monday then. First thing. I need someone with me at home from the day I'm discharged, I said. That's what the surgeon said. Someone has to be there. Can't a friend help out? Or, what about hiring someone, one of those home health aides? I'm 28 years old. I know, but I'll figure it out, I said, because I always figured it out. I hung up. On the third night, something strange happened. Lorraine came in on her rounds, and she had a look on her face I couldn't read. Not concerns exactly, something more cautious than that. She sat in the chair beside my bed, instead of just doing her checks at the door, which wasn't her usual pattern. I need to tell you something, she said, and I want to be careful about how I say it because I don't want to overstep. Okay. There's a woman who's been coming to the floor, not to your room. She stands in the hallway, just past the nursing station, and she looks at the board with the room numbers, and she stands there for a while, and then she leaves something at the desk and goes. She's been here every night. I looked at Lorraine. Every night since the day after your surgery. She asked how you were doing. We can't give her any information, obviously. But she brings things. Lorraine handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a packet of the expensive chamomile tea I'd been obsessed with since college. The kind from a specific brand that most grocery stores don't carry. And a little card that said only, "You are not as alone as you think." No signature. Who is she? I asked. She won't say. She just asks if you're okay and leaves things and goes. I turned the card over. The handwriting was neat, a little old-fashioned. The kind of penmanship that came from a generation that was actually taught it. Someone who knew me well enough to know my tea. Can you ask her to come in? I said. Lorraine shook her head slowly. She always leaves before we can offer. But she came earlier tonight than usual. She might still be in the building. I said, please find her, please. 20 minutes later, a woman appeared in my doorway. She was somewhere in her mid-60s, maybe older, with silver hair cut close and dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She was dressed simply, a gray cardigan, dark slacks. And she stood at the threshold like she wasn't sure she had permission to be there, which in a way she didn't. I watched her look at me. She pressed her lips together. Her eyes went bright in a way that she tried to control. I said, "Hi, she said back. Her voice was low. Careful, I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I don't know who you are." No. She took a breath. My name's Vizim. Wait, that's on the list. My name is Sable Greer. I was your mother's college roommate. We were best friends for almost 15 years. I'd never heard her name. They don't talk about me much, I'm guessing. She came into the room slowly, as if giving me time to change my mind, and sat in the chair by the window, not the chair close to the bed, the one further away. She kept her coat on. I think she wanted to be able to leave quickly if I asked her to. Why did they stop talking about you? She folded her hands in her lap. Because I told your mother what I saw. And she didn't want to hear it. What did you see? Sable looked at me steadily. I watched you grow up from a distance, she said. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional visit when your parents would have me over before things got bad between us. I watched how they talked to you versus how they talked to your brother. I watched what was expected of each of you. And when you were about 15, I came for Thanksgiving. You probably don't remember. I told your mother privately that I was worried, that what I was seeing wasn't healthy, that you were being groomed to carry the family's weight so your brother wouldn't have to. What did she say? She said I was projecting. She said I didn't understand their family dynamic. She said I was jealous of what they'd built. I stared at her. We didn't speak again after that. She said some other things too, before we stopped talking. About me, about my choices. She was very good at making people feel that disagreeing with her was a personal failing. Yes, I said. I know. Sable looked down at her folded hands. I kept track of you, she said quietly, not in a strange way. I hope you understand that. I couldn't fully let go. I'd known you since you were born. I was at the hospital the day you came home. I made your mother a meals and sat with her for 3 days because your father was useless with newborns and she needed the help. I genuinely didn't know what to say. I saw your name on a fundraising page for your company about 2 years ago. They were raising money for a local food bank. It was a small thing, but your photo was on the site. I thought, okay, she's out in the world, she's making it. And then 3 weeks ago, your coworker posted something in a Facebook group for your company's alumni, just asking for good thoughts for a colleague going through something medical. And I recognized your name. She looked up at me. I'm sorry I didn't come in sooner. I didn't know if I had the right. I thought about the tea, the handwriting. Someone who knew I liked chamomile. Someone who knew me from before I had to be strong. How did you know about the tea? I asked. You were obsessed with it at Fort Toisin, she said. You used to take bags of it from your mother's cabinet when you visited my apartment. I figured it was probably still your thing. I had been buying that specific tea, from that specific brand, for 14 years without ever thinking about where the habit had started. Tell me what you've been watching, I said. Sable was quiet for a moment. Then she began. She told me about the years she'd been aware of from the outside, the way my parents had handled my college applications, pushing me toward the in-state school that cost less, while Chad had gotten private school support, without question, not because of grades, but because he had ambitions, and I was the practical one, who would be fine anywhere. The way they had framed every financial conversation with me, in terms of what I could contribute to the family, not what the family could offer me. The way they'd celebrated Chad's failures as learning experiences and expected me to treat my own failures as personal shortcomings. You didn't create this pattern, she said. You were trained into it. I've given him $95,000, I said, over 4 years. His food truck, his catering company. This restaurant. Sable's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. They know about the money? Of course they know, and they've never asked him to stop. They thank me for being such a good sister. The room was quiet. He posted a photo on Instagram tonight, I said, the soft opening. My parents are in both of them. My dad is in a blazer I've never seen before. My mom is wearing a dress I know she bought new, because she texted me a photo of it from the store 3 weeks ago, asking if I thought it was too much for a restaurant opening. I had brain surgery 2 days ago. Sable reached over and put her hand on top of mine. It was a careful gesture, the kind people make when they're not sure of their welcome. I know, she said. I didn't pull my hand away. My mother called on Thursday, the soft opening night. I saw the notification and let it ring. She called twice more in the next hour. Then she texted, Chad was incredible tonight. Standing ovation from the room. One investor already talking about a second location. Wish you could have been here. Feel better soon. Love you. My father texted, so proud of your brother. We'll call when things calm down. Love, Dad. I stared at those messages for a long time. Then I called Sable. She answered in one ring. They want to come on Monday, I said. That's when they're flying back. I'll be here before Monday, she said. She arrived Saturday morning, 2 hours before my discharge. Sheesh had cleared her week. She drove me to her house in Asheville. 4 hours from the hospital, but she said it was easier than my apartment because she had a first-floor bedroom and no stairs, and she'd already talked to Dr. Ashworth's office about the post-op protocols. She had called my surgeon's office. She had asked about the protocols, while my parents were watching my brother get a standing ovation. This woman, who had not spoken to my family in 13 years, had called my doctor's office and asked what I was going to need. I cried in her car for about 45 minutes. She let me. And she didn't say anything except, "You're allowed to." The next 2 weeks were the slowest of my life. No screens was the hardest restriction. I was used to filling every quiet moment with something: a task, an email, an article, something that felt like productivity. Without that, the quiet came in, and the quiet was full of everything I hadn't let myself think about. Sable had a reading chair by a window with a bird feeder outside it. I sat there for long stretches and did nothing. She brought me meals on a schedule. Light things, easy things, nothing that required effort from me. She never hovered. She just appeared when I needed something and disappeared when I needed to be alone. She told me more, over those weeks, in pieces. Things she'd observed. The particular way my parents had spoken about me versus Chad when they thought no one was listening. The time she'd overheard my mother tell her sister that I was the easy one, which meant I don't have to worry about her, which was not a compliment. "You were trained to believe that needing things was a burden," she said one evening. "So you stopped needing things. Or you hid it so well you didn't even know you were doing it." "I'm in a lot of debt," I said. "His debt, basically. My debt that went to his dreams." She didn't flinch. "What do you want to do about that?" "I don't know yet." "That's okay, you have time to figure it out." My mother called on Monday as promised. Sable handed me the phone without expression and went to make tea. "Emma, where are you? Your apartment is empty. The neighbor said you left someone Saturday." "Who took you home?" "I'm at a friend's." "What friend?" "Where?" "Someone who was there when I needed someone." She paused. "Are you being dramatic?" "I had brain surgery a week ago, Mom. I needed someone there when I was discharged." "You weren't. We were going to come Monday. We told you." "Monday was yesterday. And I needed someone Saturday." "Well, there was a brunch. The investors wanted to." She stopped. Her voice shifted. "You're being very unfair about this. We have been pulling for you this whole time." We lit a candle. We called. You called when the lunch service was over. "That's not we were in the middle of something, Emma. This was Chad's biggest moment. His entire career built toward this. You know that. You've always known how much this meant to him." "I funded it," I said. "We know you've been generous. We're very grateful." $95,000. Mom? I said the number clearly, the way Dr. Ashworth had said craniotomy, like it deserved to be a real word that filled real space. The food truck was $12,000. The catering company was $22,000. The restaurant has been $40,000 plus change, and that doesn't count the liquor license I fronted last spring. There was silence on the other end. "That's..." She started. "I kept every transfer. I have a spreadsheet." More silence. "We didn't know it was that much," she finally said. "You knew exactly how much it was. You were on 3 of those calls." "Emma, I'm done," I said. "I'm not saying that dramatically. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm done. No more money. No more being the one who figures it out. I needed someone 6 days ago and no one came. That's the thing I'm going to remember now when someone asks me to give." "You don't mean that." "I do. And I think on some level you've always known I would get here eventually. You just counted on it taking longer." She hung up. I wasn't sure which one of us she was angrier at. Sable came back with the tea and didn't ask. She sat across from me, and we looked out the window at the birds, and I felt, for the first time in years, like I had taken up the right amount of space in a room. My brother called from a number I didn't recognize on the 3rd week. I answered by accident. "Emma, finally. I've been trying to reach you." His voice had that particular register he got when he needed something. A kind of preemptive warmth. Slightly elevated in pitch, like he was already anticipating resistance and trying to charm his way past it. "The restaurant is doing really well," he said. "Really well. The Portland Monthly piece came out and it's incredible. But I'm running into a cash flow issue because of the success, actually. That's the funny thing. We need to expand the kitchen capacity faster than I planned, and there's a contractor who can start next week if I can give him a deposit. It's $48,000. I had brain surgery last week," I said. "I know, and I'm really glad you're okay. Mom said you were being difficult about it, but I told her you probably just needed time. Listen, about the contractor. I'm not giving you money, Chad. I'm not asking for a gift. This is a loan. This is a real business now. Portland Monthly, do you understand what that means for valuation? I understand what $95,000 means to my savings account. A beat. He regrouped. Look, I know the timing is bad, but you've always come through. That's who you are. You're the person who shows up. The person who shows up, I said. When did I show up for my own surgery? That's not fair. Mom and Dad were there for a reason. Were they? You know how important the opening was, as important as my brain? He didn't answer. I could hear him shifting, recalculating. I blocked his number when I hung up. That night, Sable asked me how I was doing. Not medically, she meant the other kind. Lighter, I said. And also terrible. Is that possible? Absolutely, she said. That's exactly what it feels like. She told me about the years after my mother cut her off. The way she'd grieved it like a death. Not because she missed being mistreated, but because she missed who they'd been before? Or who she'd thought they were. It had taken her almost 3 years to stop picking up the phone to call my mother when something good happened. You'll grieve it too, she said. Even if it's the right thing. I know. But you'll come out the other side. I changed my number 2 weeks after that. I sent a single email to my parents and brother from a new address. I'm okay. I need space and time. Please contact me through work or mutual connections. I mean this with no anger, only honesty. I can't be what you need me to be anymore. I didn't get a response. I expected I wouldn't. At 6 weeks, Dr. Ashworth cleared me to return to screens, to driving, to normal activity. My brain was healing the way it was supposed to. There was a brief, surreal checkup where she looked at my scans and said, "You came through this beautifully," and I thought about how that sentence would have meant nothing 8 weeks ago when I was asking for my laptop in the ER. Faye gave me another 2 weeks before expecting me back at work. I spent them in Sable's reading chair, doing nothing in particular. I started writing. Not for any purpose, just notes, observations, fragments, things I remembered. Things I was figuring out. Sable had a journal she'd given me in the first week that I'd left untouched, and somewhere in week 5 I picked it up and started and didn't stop. I wrote about being 12 years old and telling my mother I wanted to take painting classes, and being told we should put that money toward your brother's robotics camp. You're practical. You'll find other outlets. I wrote about being 22 and passing up a job offer in Seattle because my parents said they needed me nearby to help manage things, and the things they needed me to manage turned out to be Chad's food truck permit application. I wrote about the first time I transferred money to my brother's account and how my mother had said, "See, this is exactly why we're so proud of you." And how good that had felt, how deliberately that feeling had been manufactured, how long it had taken me to understand what was actually happening. I wrote about Sable standing in a hospital hallway every night with chamomile tea. I'm going to move to Asheville. I told Faye on the phone in week 7. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "The remote work policies covers your role. Consider it done." I moved into a 1-bedroom 2 miles from Sable's house at the start of the year. I got a therapist who specialized in family systems and enmeshment, which is the clinical term for what had been done to me over 28 years. And which turned out to have a whole literature, and a whole vocabulary, and a whole community of people who had survived versions of the same thing. This was useful to know. At month 4, my brother found my work email and sent a message. "The restaurant is struggling. I need your help. Family doesn't abandon family. You know that." I forwarded it to my personal account, printed it, and brought it to therapy. My therapist asked what I felt when I read it. "Tired," I said, and relieved that I'm tired instead of guilty. She wrote something in her notes. At month 6, my father sent a certified letter to my old apartment. My former neighbor forwarded it. It said that my mother had been diagnosed with early-stage diabetes, and they were struggling to manage her medical costs, and as the family member with the most financial stability. His words. They were hoping I would consider helping with the expenses. I put the letter in a folder labeled Documents I Am Keeping, as evidence of the pattern. I did not send money. At month 8, my brother's restaurant closed. I found out from a mutual acquaintance, not from any of them. It had lasted 14 months. I felt a small, quiet pang. Not for the money, not exactly, but for the version of things where it had worked out differently. Where he had actually learned something, changed something, built something real. Then I put my laptop away and went over to Sable's for dinner because it was Sunday and we had a standing Sunday dinner, and she had made pot roast and I was not going to miss pot roast because I was feeling wistful about a person who had never once shown up for me. At 1 year post-surgery, Dr. Ashworth cleared me completely. Clean scans. No recurrence concerns. She shook my hand at the end of the appointment and said, "Go live your life." I went home and called Sable. She cried a little, which she almost never did. I cried too. Then we made plans to take a trip to Portugal in the spring, because she had always wanted to go, and I had never let myself want things without a reason. And going to Portugal because someone you love has always wanted to go turned out to be reason enough. My mother sent a message through a cousin I was still in contact with. It said she missed me. It said she hoped I was okay. It said my brother was going through a very hard time and could use his family. I wrote back through the cousin, "I hope she's well. I can't help with Chad," that was all. There was a period, around month 14, 15, where I thought hard about reaching out. Not because I wanted things to go back. I knew they couldn't go back. But because grief is not linear, and missing people is not the same as them being safe to return to. I talked about it in therapy for several sessions. I wrote about it in the journal. I walked around Asheville at odd hours thinking about it. What I kept coming back to was this. My parents had known I was going to have brain surgery, had known I would need someone to be there, and had actively chosen not to rearrange a single flight. They had not thought, "How can we make this work?" They had not thought, "What does she need?" They had thought, "She'll figure it out. She always figures it out." And then they had gone to my brother's soft opening and posted photos in the new clothes they'd bought for the occasion. That was the thing. Not that they had made a hard choice under pressure. That they had made no choice at all. I simply had not registered as a choice that needed to be made. I stayed in Asheville. At month 18, I started a small consulting practice on the side of my full-time job. Financial operations, the thing I was good at, the thing I'd spent my 20s doing for a company, while I quietly bled money into my brother's bank account. The consulting made good money. I put it into a savings account I had named, in my contacts, simply, mine. At month 22, I met someone, a landscape architect named Gil, who had also moved to Asheville for the slower pace and the mountains, and had also, it turned out, done some work on extracting himself from family dynamics that weren't serving him. On our third date, I told him the basics of the past 2 years. He listened without interrupting. At the end, he said, "That sounds incredibly hard, and also really brave." I told Sable about him. She said, "Bring him Sunday." He came Sunday. He brought wine and helped with dishes and told Sable she had a beautiful garden and asked genuine questions about her life and her history, and was not at any point performing any of this. He was just a person in a room, paying attention. After he left, Sable said, "He's good. I can tell the difference." That meant more than I can explain. At month 28, my father called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because I thought it was the doctor's office. He sounded old. The particular kind of old that happens fast when something has shifted. "Emma," he said, "your mother is not well. It's her heart. She's in the hospital." "I'm sorry," I said. "I meant it. She's asking for you." I let that sit for a moment. "I can't come," I said. I said it as gently as I could, because I was not angry anymore, just clear. "I'm sorry she's sick. I truly am. But I can't be there. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and walking into a hospital room isn't going to undo that or help either of us. She's your mother." "She is. And I was her daughter. I needed her for something once, and she chose something else. I'm not punishing her for that. I've just accepted that some distances can't be crossed in the time we have." He was quiet for a long time. "The restaurant," he finally said. "We've been trying to help Chad get back on his feet. It's been harder than we thought. We thought you should know." "I know," I said. "If you could see your way to Dad." He stopped. "I can't. I'm not going to. I hope she gets well. I hope you're both okay." I hung up and sat with it for a while. Then I called Sable. Then I called my therapist and left a voicemail. Then I sat with Gil on the back porch and looked at the mountains and let myself feel every part of it without running from any of it. My mother did recover. I got a text from the cousin who still talked to me. "Your mom is out of the hospital. Thought you should know." I wrote back, "Thank you. I'm glad." I didn't reach out to her directly. I thought about it. I decided the kindest thing I could do for both of us was to stay where I was. At 3 years, Gil proposed on a Tuesday evening in the kitchen while I was making pasta sitsi. No production. Just him, looking at me with the kind of steadiness I had spent my whole life thinking I didn't deserve, asking if I wanted to keep doing this forever. Sable cried at the engagement dinner. Not sad crying. The other kind. At the wedding, the guest list was the people who had shown up. Faye, the coworker who had found me in the break room and called 911 and changed my life by doing so. 3 friends from Asheville. Sable, who stood next to me in the photos in a way that looked like family, which my parents were not there. My brother was not there. There was a moment, getting ready, when one of my friends asked if I was sad about it. I thought about it honestly. Not sad exactly, I said. Something more like resolved. Like, a question I've answered. She nodded. She had her own version of this story. Most people do. 4 years after I collapsed in that break room, after a coworker screamed, headache medic came and a tired doctor found a tumor in my brain, and a woman I barely remembered stood outside my hospital room every night with chamomile tea. I published the first piece I'd ever written for public eyes, an essay about what it means to be the one who figures it out and what happens when you stop. Within a week, I had more messages than I could count. People I'd never met, writing to say, "This is my story too." The exact amounts were different. The siblings were different. The events that went on without them were different. But the feeling, the specific, particular feeling of lying in a hospital bed, waiting for someone who was never going to come, that was the same. I wasn't the only one. I wrote back to as many of them as I could. I'd said what Sable had said to me in various forms, because it was still the truest thing I knew. You are not as alone as you think. Chad reached out when the essay gained traction. From a new email address, brief and direct. "You're destroying our family's reputation. Take it down or I'll involve a lawyer." I forwarded it to Gil's cousin, who happened to be an attorney. She sent back one word, "Adorable." I left the essay up. My parents sent a message together through the cousin channel. "We're hurt that you would do this publicly. We raised you. We love you. We hope someday you'll understand that we did the best we could." I wrote back, "I know you did. I believe that. It wasn't enough. I hope you're well." I didn't hear from them again after that. Not because of anger, not because of punishment. Just because there was nothing left to negotiate. Sable is 71 now. She taught herself to paint in her 60s, and her living room is full of canvases. Landscapes, mostly, the mountains in different light. Sometimes I sit with my coffee and look at them, and think about being 12 years old, and wanting painting classes, and being told I was the practical one. Last fall, I finally took a class, oil on canvas. I was terrible at it. Sable came with me, and was also terrible at it. We laughed so hard at our own paintings that the instructor asked us, gently, to please try to focus. I framed mine anyway. It hangs in the hallway of our house. Gil said it looked like a sunset having an argument, which I thought was the best possible review. My second essay went up last month. More messages came. A woman in Ohio who had given her brother her inheritance. A man in Georgia whose parents had missed his daughter's birth for a sibling's graduation party. A woman in her 60s, writing to say she was still in the middle of it, still trapped. And she had read my words 3 times and was trying to find the door. I wrote back to her first. I said, "The door is there, you'll find it, and when you do, there will be people on the other side who are very glad you came through." I meant it. I knew it from experience. Some of us needed a brain tumor and a stranger with chamomile tea to find the door. Some of us get there differently. The how doesn't matter as much as the arriving. I'm still learning that what I need counts. That help is not weakness. That no is a full sentence with nothing missing from it. Some lessons take a long time to stick. But I'm keeping the journal. I'm writing the essays. I'm going to Portugal in the spring. And every Sunday, without fail, I'm at Sable's table for dinner. With the people who showed up. because that is what family is, and I'm done pretending otherwise.